Good afternoon. I'm Sheriff Kevin Bigg to the Dunn County Sheriff's Office. Standing next to me, Investigator Dan Westland and Sergeant Jason Stalker. You'll hear a little bit more about their involvement as I go through my statement here a little bit. On February 15th, 1974, Mary Kay Chalias was found deceased near the intersection of 708th Avenue and 990th Street in the township of Springbrook, Dunn County. Mary's death at the time was ruled a homicide. The initial investigation revealed that Mary was from Minneapolis, Minnesota, and believed to be hitchhiking from Minneapolis, Minnesota to an art show in Chicago. There was an eyewitness that observed a suspect and suspect vehicle that were believed to be connected to the homicide of Mary. Over the course of the last several decades, there have been many tips, leads, interviews done related to this homicide by multiple law enforcement agencies, and this case has been worked on by many members of the Dunn County Sheriff's Office. There are also several items of evidence been examined and re-examined over the years as technological advances in DNA were developed. Still, no viable suspects were identified until recently. In recent years, the Dunn County Sheriff's Office investigators began working with Ramapo College in New Jersey and their team of genetic genealogists. Through investigative genetic genealogy, a viable suspect was identified. Yesterday, Sergeant Jason Stalker and Investigator Dan Westland tracked down that suspect at his apartment in Owatonna, Minnesota, and completed an interview with him. When confronted with the evidence, 84-year-old John K. Miller confirmed his involvement with Mary's homicide from 1974. With the assistance of Minnesota BCA, the Owatonna Police Department, these two gentlemen standing next to me were finally able to arrest John K. Miller for the homicide of Mary Kay Chalias after 50 years. John Miller is in custody in Steele County, Minnesota, awaiting transport to Dunn County after waiving extradition in court there today. Along with Sergeant Jason Stalker and Investigator Dan Westland, I want to thank all the members of this agency that have worked on this case over the past 50 years. Specifically, retired Captain Scott McRoberts, who probably had more passion for solving this case than anyone. This is a huge victory for our agency. We are willing to answer a few questions today, but we are planning a more in-depth press conference on Monday at 1 p.m. We'll be here in this room or upstairs in the multi-purpose room, depending on availability. At that time, a representative from Ramapo College will be here to talk about the work they did on this case to assist our agency. However, we cannot get into too much detail about this case to ensure Mr. Miller has a fair trial here in Dunn County. Any questions?
Can you just walk us through that genetic genealogy process, kind of what it entails and how it exactly led you to the suspect here?
Well, that would be a better question for a scientist, not a cop. But Investigator Westland can probably answer that much better than I can. He's kind of been in the thick of this. And Dan, do you want to step up and answer a few questions?
Yeah, so to keep it very brief, because next week we will have somebody here that can explain an in-depth process, but essentially what it does is provide us with leads in certain family lineages. We're able to follow those leads, which ultimately led to the arrest.
And
regarding the suspect, what was he in the area for? Was he living here? Was he ever on the radar prior to the genetic genealogy?
Some things with the investigation are continuing still to be investigated, so I won't comment on it at this point.
Have you guys spoken to the family of the victim? Have they offered any reaction to the news that this cold case has a suspect now in custody?
Yes, Sergeant Stalker and I both spoke with the family last night.
What did they say?
They were relieved and very thankful for our agency and everybody that's assisted thus far with the investigation.
Was there a piece of DNA that was found that was used in the genetic genealogy, a piece of DNA that was kind of found at the crime scene that kind of matched with him? Or
Again, I think I'll leave Ramapo College representatives to better explain that process.
And what was his demeanor yesterday when you spoke with the suspect? How would you describe the interaction?
It was a conversation, and he was fairly calm about what had occurred, and it's about all I can comment on.
Did he have
at this
a
point.
record, like, was this a guy who's been in prison before and stuff like that?
More details will come out eventually regarding the entirety of the investigation.
In 2017, Sergeant McRoberts talked about there being 2 profiles at the time that you were looking into. Can you extrapolate upon that? Was there another profile that was found at the scene that was not Mary's in addition to this one?
I think, I believe that some of that DNA, I don't recall exactly from 2017, but some of those were eliminated as possibilities.
There were headlines about, that serial killer who played for the Packers at one point.
Yep,
That got eliminated at one point?
that suspect was eliminated.
Okay.
Yep.
And then there were, just reading through all the old articles about it over the years, like that car that this guy was driving had a distinct look to it.
Yep.
Was that ever recovered?
No, it was not recovered.
And are any of the eyewitnesses still alive that were mentioned throughout the years?
I know that one of the eyewitnesses was interviewed within the last 5 years again, and I believe he's still alive.
Okay.
Did you ever recover the murder weapon? Can you go into that at all?
At this point, it has not been recovered.
Did receive any more information from the suspect, such as, like where the murder occurred? There was, theories that it occurred and then he dropped the body off at that location, or did it happen there? Is there a little more clearer picture of how this took place?
I won't get into the details of the conversation they had with Investigator Westland and Sergeant Stalker, but there's physical evidence, at the scene that we could prove, I believe, that homicide occurred there.
Are you able to say, was his confession kind of like a relief, like getting this off his chest after all these years? I mean, you guys have had lots of interrogations and lots of confessions for other crimes over the years. How does this characterize?
Dan, Jason, and I mentioned this to somebody earlier, but I believe it's got to even be a relief for him after 50 years of living with this. It's had to have been on his mind almost every day. You would think anybody with a conscience, it would. I think he was done fighting it personally.
What was it like for you guys? I mean, you put your heart and soul in this. I mean, you guys were, over the years, I know you have a lot of like you mentioned, leads, evidence you're going through, and everything else. What was it like for investigators, your department, to finally have at least a suspect here?
Well, I can speak, I'm going to shut this mic off. I can speak from my behalf. I was actually sitting in a deer stand when I got a text from Investigator Westland yesterday, and I had a difficult time controlling my excitement. I've been here with this agency for 35 years, and this case has been worked on all of those 35 years I've been here. And, I've been through with every investigator that's picked this up and ran with it and got to a dead end to finally get some closure. I was able to send a text to the former sheriff and two former chief deputies of this agency last night to give them the news, and they were quite excited.
Who was with him when you made the arrest?
Who is with the suspect?
Yes.
He's by himself at the apartment, correct?
Yes.
Can you speak to the victim at all? What was reported over the years is that she was an honor student at the U of M, honor graduate, an artist, and she was on her way to an art show. Seems like a very successful person whose promising life was taken away.
Yeah, absolutely. In 1974, it wasn't that unusual for somebody to hitchhike their way from Minneapolis to Chicago. But it's stories like this is the reason we don't let our kids do it anymore. This was a very bright young lady who had a very bright future ahead of her, and her life was taken away from her way too young.
And given the suspect's age, I can't imagine that he would spend much time in prison, once he gets convicted for the homicide. So taking that into consideration, does it still feel like justice is served here? Like, I know there's closure now, but 50 years had gone by,
Right.
and now he's an old man, so what
No,
do you say
my,
to that?
my preference would be that he would have spent the last 50 years in prison. Unfortunately, that didn't work out, so I'm pretty comfortable in saying that he's going to spend the rest of his life in prison. He's 84 years old. Who knows how long that could be?
Are there any court dates set here yet?
No, nothing established yet.
Can you give us a sense of the timeline, kind of when this started with the genetic genealogy, when he was identified, and kind of how much time elapsed?
Well, these guys did a lot of work in just the last week of tracking this, down specifically to our suspect. But we've been working with the genealogy with this college for the last year or so, and they've been doing a lot of work. And it's the good part is it's not costing Dunn County a lot of money for them to participate. They've been an incredible partner. Agencies can spend thousands and thousands of dollars sending DNA samples to private labs across the country to try and get results, and we had a college very willing to step up and help us with this process. So
And are you using them on additional cold cases?
not any additional cases at this time. We do have another cold case from back in that era. I don't remember what year the Butterbach case was from.
She disappeared.
71, she disappeared. But that's these two guys' next project.
So this is your first genetic genealogy case, correct? Family trees and stuff like that?
Yes, for the most part.
Okay,
I mean,
so-
DNA is certainly something that we've used for years, but through genealogy, this will probably be our first.
I know you're saving some stuff for the next thing, but are you able to at least say, I mean, this guy was adopted, right? And that's just a huge curveball that even people using their own family tree stuff
Right.
run
And-
into.
Right.
Can you speak to that and just kind of that whole curveball aspect of it?
No, I think that's something I'll leave for them to discuss, maybe even Monday, but further in the court process. But obviously, you have an adopted individual, it throws a curveball. And it takes a lot more work that these guys have put in over the last couple weeks to try and dodge that curveball and head in the right direction. And it worked out. We were able to sit down with him and let him confirm his involvement in her homicide yesterday.
Those retired guys, when you told them, did they ever think it was going to be solved?
I wonder. I think, and unfortunately, a lot of them that worked on this case have gone to their own grave. Back to Sheriff Daryl Spangaletti. Corky Spangaletti was a sheriff at the time that worked on this, and it was really just he and the undersheriff. So when you get a call of a homicide, the two of you go. So Corky Spangaletti, the sheriff at the time, kind of took the lead on this case. He really didn't have anybody else to assign it to. And, Corky's since passed. Sheriff Bob Zebro has passed. A lot of people worked on this case under Sheriff Bob Zebro. So I'm, like you say, elated to get some news to my former coworkers that are still alive, that this has been solved.
So understanding that you'll provide more information on Monday, you can't give those details yet. Is there something, I guess, that we should brace ourselves for that will be revealed on Monday, like any gruesome details in particular, or is it just all like the rest of the nuts and bolts of what you guys found in the investigation?
Yeah, a little bit more of the nuts and bolts, with caution that we don't harm this case for the DA to prosecute. We obviously need to be careful not to cause a jury to be swayed in one way or another with too much information that's released before court trial, if he so chooses to go to a trial. But we'll probably get into a little more of the nuts and bolts of the DNA and that genealogy tracking on Monday. A representative from the college will be here to talk about that. And we're hoping to have some of Mary's family here to talk about this case as well.
Going back to the department's persistence with this case, do you know how many investigators, sheriffs, deputies have worked on this case over the years?
Well, it would be Corky Spangaletti, Rich Risler, Bob Zebro, Sheriff Dennis Smith, and then myself. And the number of investigators, Investigator Craig Kozer had this case for many years. Investigator Brad Leach had this case for many years. When Brad Leach retired, Captain Scott McRoberts kind of took it upon himself to run hard with this case and really got the DNA testing rolling on this. And when he retired, he kind of turned it over to Dan and Jason to keep running with. So numerous people. Minnesota DCI was involved in this case from the get-go. Obviously, Sheriff Corky Spangaletti and his undersheriff, being pretty much a two-man department at the time, didn't have a whole lot of resources, so they relied on Minnesota or Wisconsin DCI to pick up a lot of the leads and questioning and follow-ups on suspect vehicles and things like that.
Regarding the area where she was found, it was, you mentioned the intersection now, but it was always referred to as a dead-end road. Like, has that area kind of changed over the years, or?
Not really. It's
So was it further down the road at the dead end, or how?
yeah, it was just it was near the intersection on the dead-end portion of that road.
After 35 years, did you think you'd see this case resolved?
I always kept hope, but yeah, there's always that question, and I was reminded by my wife this morning that this is a big deal. This is something we've been working on for years and years and years, and finally to put a bow on this one and have somebody in custody for it is unbelievably satisfying as a law enforcement officer.
The body was exhumed at one point. Did evidence from that help you guys now, or did that end up kind of being irrelevant?
I'm not going to get into the weeds on that. Obviously, there's more potential for DNA from her body and articles of clothing that were discovered at the scene, things like that, but I don't want to get too far into the weeds on that. All right, we're going to wrap it up. Appreciate you all being here. And Monday we'll plan on being back here at the sheriff's office or upstairs. We'll send out information. Probably going to try and do it in the multi-purpose room upstairs where there's a little more room and a few more options with a microphone. So we'll probably see all of you on Monday.
Thanks, Sheriff. Thank you.
Thank you.